Hi there, this is the Common Magician with another trick. Today we're going to look at a trick that isn't, I think, covered very much anymore. It was popular there about a decade ago for a while, and it was only really popular again at that time after it was popular back in the 1990s when David Copperfield did the bill change on national television, and that's when I first saw it as a youngster. And I watched his presentation of it, and I kind of reverse engineered all the moves, knowing what the method was that he was using. I reverse engineered it and figured it out, and then I ended up performing it. It was one of the really reliable tricks that I would perform for people was the bill change, and I could borrow a bill of a high denomination and then change it to a 1 and then change it back again and hand it out for examination, and everything was clean. And I got pretty good at it as a kid, and I used to do that quite a bit as a teenager. I got into college and I started investigating some other types of bill changes and started looking into different ways that it can be done. I discovered there's quite a few different ways to do it, and not too long ago, although I guess it's probably about over 10 years ago now, when the craze kind of picked up again, a book came out called Switch, Unfolding the $100 Bill Change, and this is written by John Lovick, and you know John Lovick as Handsome Jack. He was on Penn and Teller some time ago in one of the early seasons, and this book is quite remarkable. It's got very, very good illustrations, and it covers just about anything you would ever want to know about the bill change and its various forms. Not only just the bill change, but I think it has some chapters in there on billet switches and other types of switches that operate on the principle of the bill change, and it's a remarkable book. I would highly recommend it. It's a little bit pricey, but worth every penny. I've read it through a couple times, and focusing on the sections that I thought were most interesting to me, and I've gleaned quite a bit from it. I've come up with a few what are called tipless bill changes. We'll talk about what that means in a minute here, that I got out of this book. Some very, very interesting handlings that were very, very, very clean without using any kind of apparatus or gimmicks. So Switch, highly recommend it. Now, obviously I'm not going to teach anything directly from this book, but I am going to look at a couple of handlings for the bill change that were well known well before that book came out. And they get honorable mentions in there. One in particular is the Mike Kozlowski switch. And that is the handling, basically, that David Copperfield used on television. So I'm going to cover that. But in my performance, you'll note, if you know anything about the bill change, I used one handling to change it the first time. And when I changed it back, I used a different handling. So I'm just going to show you a couple of other ideas. Some other ideas that I picked up along the way, some that are in the book and some that are not. One of the ideas in the handling I picked up from Doug McKenzie, who put out a DVD called the $100 Bill Change. And let me see if I have it here. So I bought this, back when it came out. And this is based on the Juan Pablo bill change, and that bill change is in the Switch book. So Doug McKenzie's effect, the effect is in the Switch book, but Doug's handling is uniquely different. And I won't get into that because it's a marketed effect. I highly recommend you buy it, if you can find it, particularly if it's, discounted somewhere and you're into bill switches. It might be a bill switch you might be interested in. It's very, very powerful. In fact, I'll show you a presentation of it here as I'm talking. But it's a presentation, and this is the Juan Pablo bill change that you're looking at. But the presentation involves a very fast visual change. And McKenzie's handling of it is much like the Kozlowski handling, in that you end very, very clean. Now, the version that you saw there, the Juan Pablo that you see here, the Juan Pablo bill change is what's called a tipless change. So you do not end clean. You don't start clean. You don't end clean. You probably wouldn't do it with a borrowed bill. Doug's version, you can borrow a bill and do it theoretically with a little bit of preparation in there on the spot. But some handling that Doug talks about in his version I used for my second switch, and I'm going to talk about just a couple of things I picked up from that. This is not really tipping off methods or anything. We're just looking at some basic handlings of the bills and the process in which you switch them around and handle them in the hands as you're doing your switch. So let's take a look at the bill change here and talk about the most common way to do it. You can't really talk about the bill change effect without talking about these guys, thumb tips. And I do want to talk about thumb tips very briefly. The version that you saw me perform there on the video did use a thumb tip, and as I was growing up as a teenager when I performed this, I always did the thumb tip version, again that Kozlowski version that you saw Copperfield do back in the 90s. And I would perform, my hands were a little bit smaller then, not much but a little bit. I always performed with a full-size adult thumb tip. This is a plastic Vernet thumb tip, and back then the thumb tip fit. Now thumb tips are really supposed to go only that far. I put them on all the way for a bill change, and I keep the bill concealed in between. My thumbs are a little bit smaller, but when my hands are smaller, this was a lot bigger, and I found that the size doesn't really matter if you're using it right. Now this color is a pretty good match as color matches go. And so is this one. This is also a Vernet. Now this is I think this is a vinyl thumb tip, so it's kind of more of a rubberized. It's a little bit sticky too. I've never really had a great use for this thumb tip. I really like it because it's nice and pliable, but dollar bills get stuck in there very easily. They don't slide out easily from this kind of a thumb tip. So I've never really had a use. I think I did a coin vanish once with this because you can get a quarter in there. It'll flatten it out a bit, but you can hide a quarter in there. It deforms the tip quite a bit, but again, if you're using a thumb tip in the proper way, it doesn't really matter. So not a lot of use for this kind. I highly recommend the plastic, the hard plastic. Now I have this one here, which is actually more my size. And this is a junior thumb tip. My hands again are kind of thin. They're adult size, but I'm a fairly skinny guy, fairly thin, bony, lanky, and this fits me a little bit better. Say if I was going to make some sugar disappear or even put some water in there, I can get a seal on this one and keep liquid or fluid in it. Now, you're looking at this and you're thinking about the color matches here, and you can see that the color match of the Vernet matches a lot better. It's much more closer to skin tone than this guy right here. This is almost a white color to it, and this is I don't know what this is. This is a knockoff I got on Amazon a few years ago. I just bought a handful of thumb tips from a few different makers, and this one came. I actually use this one quite a bit, even though the color is way off. And I know you've probably heard that comment before from some of the old timers about thumb tips, that you could have one that's, painted yellow, or, a silver, reflective nickel-plated thumb tip, and if you're doing it right, it really doesn't matter. And I'll have to say that this is the one that I used on the performance that you watched, and if you didn't see it, it's because I was using it right, and we'll go over that a little bit. There is a lot of truth to what you hear in those old stories about thumb tips, that if you're using it right, you shouldn't really ever see it anyway. That the utility of a thumb tip is really to contain and hold something so that your hands don't have to. It's not necessarily there to, be seen. That being said, when you're doing the bill change with a thumb tip, you absolutely can use a thumb tip in such a way that it is seen, but not noticed, even if the color is completely off. I've heard some people with dark skin, even African American people with a much darker skin, say that they use these regular Vernay thumb tips. They don't really worry about the color of them. That, again, if you're using it properly, even when you're using it properly in such a way that it is seen, and we'll talk about angles in a minute, you really shouldn't notice the color. It shouldn't stand out. It should go completely unnoticed. So this is the one that I used for the video on purpose. Typically, I probably, again, would use this one right here, the plastic Vernay. It's a kind of a higher quality, more common thumb tip. But this is what you saw in the video. So if you didn't see it, point proven. So let's get into the bill switch and the bill change and how it can work with a thumb tip and some of the handlings that you can use. So for the traditional thumb tip version of the bill change, I'm using a Missmade here, and I have a whole bunch of these. You can buy these online if you want to, or from a Magic Supply store. They are, I believe, they're stock prints that are just miscut. I'm not really sure about that. I've never really paid attention to it. This, I think, is a print. I don't think this is real. This is a printed version. It would make sense that it is because the serial number is the same. So this is just a piece of paper. This won't last very long. With enough folds on this, it'll start to come apart. But some of the Missmades you get are real bills. Real bill stock, I believe, or real linen stock, and they'll last as long as a dollar bill will. So go ahead and get one of those, or just use a different denomination. A lot of different ways that you can do the bill changes, a lot of different kinds of presentations using different kinds of bills, and that's really the benefit of the John Lovick switch book, is that it talks about the many different presentations that have been thought of, not merely in technique, but just in what the effect is. What is the effect? Are you changing a dollar to something else, to another dollar, or are you transforming parts of a dollar? What's going on in the effect? Are you making a dollar disappear? Are you making a dollar appear from nowhere? There's a lot of different ways to look at the effect, and that can determine what kind of bill you're going to use that's loaded in the tip. So we're going to use a Missmade, and the way we're going to fold it is as such. We're going to start by folding the left side as you're looking at it over to the right, and we're going to fold the bottom up, and then we're going to fold the left to the right. You can rewind this to look at it, or go back on the playback, and then we're going to fold the bottom up, and then this will be loaded into the thumb tip against the thumb, just like that. So you want it such that it's sitting right near the edge, not on very hard, and you want it, only up to the joint. I suppose if you're using a larger thumb tip, and of course this is shorter too, a little bit, you could go in a little bit further on it. When I was a kid, my thumb would go all the way in on it, and that was fine. That's how my hand fit in it, so there's nothing wrong with that. Don't listen to these recommendations out here that say there's only one way to do it. There's a right way and a wrong way. Really, any way you can get it on your hand properly so that it's in place and it's not going to fall off, and it's holding the load that you want it to hold is right. So however you make it work for your hands is proper. So we'll use this one over here. Load it in like that, and we're ready to rock and roll. We'll talk here very quickly about presentations of the bill. So the first thing is that if you are using the thumb tip properly, you're not going to let it be seen. And let me show you what that looks like. When I show the bill to be a single by itself, I turn it around like this. You can see that in this motion, the thumb would not be seen. So just in the turning around, from my point of view, it's hidden behind something. It's either hidden behind fingers or it's hidden behind the bill. Now that doesn't mean that it doesn't flash. And that's the benefit of a thumb tip, is that if it flashes between the fingers, it can't be noticed. Even if the color is off, it wouldn't be seen. With shadow on it and just little pieces of it being seen in the windows of the fingers, you're completely clear and safe. And you'd see that on my performance if you go back and look. So this is one way in which it's not shown, just by turning the bill around, keeping it hidden behind. Now another way is that if you're showing the hands empty, I can show my hand empty like this to the audience, and my thumb is staying behind the bill. Even though this thumb doesn't have a thumb tip on it, my hand is empty and I'm not holding anything, and you can see that my palm is completely clear from the audience perspective, but my thumb stays there, and I can do it over here as well. So again, I'm showing my hand empty and not showing the thumb tip. And you'll see that on the performance. Now, some people will say that you can point the thumb tip directly at the audience, assuming the audience is out there, that this looks pretty good. And it does. I'll show you this from another angle, as you can see here, that it does look fairly authentic, even with this thumb tip that's off on color. But it's unnecessary. You don't have to do that. It's just a passing moment. It's not a moment that you dwell on. So again, you take your bill, you show both sides just once, show the hands empty just once, and then you can commence with the change. And as far as everyone is concerned, you are clean, completely clean. So the Kozlowski handling is the way I did it on the first change. And the way this works is you take the bill, and we're going to fold it just like we folded the bill that we loaded. We're going to take the left side and move it over. Then we're going to take the bottom side and we're going to push that up. And here's where we get into the dirty work here. When I push over and forward and to the right on the left-hand side, I'm going to push the thumb tip into the hand, grab it with my left-hand thumb, and put it into finger palm as I take my loaded bill out. So that move right there, up to speed, would look like this. Left side, bottom side, steal the load as we fold it over. Now my fingers stay in front. Even though I open up my hand, my fingers stay in front because you're going to have margins sticking out in various places at various moments. So you don't want those to be seen. You want to square this up, but you're going to kind of cover the edges as you hold it here. Then the next fold, and again, you hold it fairly securely in finger palm, mostly with the ring finger down here, ring finger and pinky. The next fold we're going to fold up, and we're going to fold the loaded bill in front of the folded bill, the original bill. And then from this point, we're going to start to unfold. Now, John Lovick in his book, I will tip you off to this, states that there is kind of a magic moment that you may want to account for, and I account for it here in the folding of this last 16th fold. I usually blow on it at this point as if this is where things change, and it actually is where things change. Now, there is a fold, and there is a discrepancy fold right here, in that when we unfold the loaded bill, it's going to fold up, which is a different direction than the first bill folded. Now, this goes relatively unnoticed, and if you're doing a mismade, it kind of really throws people off, because when you get unfolded, you can see that things are completely out of order, and it's almost like it's a Rubik's magic puzzle in the way that it's folded up and unfolded and then in a different place. So we start to unfold, and then at this point I push over to the left so that I can hunt over here for my opening, clearly and cleanly without having anything flash. Then I reach in, and what we're going to do is we're going to kind of reverse the operation. This is the Kozlowski handling. I'm going to take my thumb tip, and I'm going to pull it back with my thumb. So it's in kind of a thumb palm here. and I'm going to push it forward and load my bill, my original bill, into the thumb tip as I reach across the front to grab the front of the bill and pull it to the left. And then from here I'm free and clear to just unfold the bill, and then I can show just as I did at the beginning. So then you can even hand out the bill with the thumb tip thumb like this. And as the thumb tip is taken from a spectator, this might be the one place where the thumb tip is seen blatantly, and even then it's under the cover of fingers. The hand is empty and you're clean, and then you can ditch the thumb tip any way that you want to. So let me go back and hit that last part again. Get myself back into position. So this is where we were at, and this is the loading part. So at this point I would separate the bill, and then I can reach across the front to load the thumb tip back on with the bill, and then unload or unfold the bill completely. So that is the traditional handling of the bill change. Now you could reverse this. You just do the exact same thing again, and you can reverse it and take the bill back to normal, because the bill as it's loaded into the thumb tip is in the identical position as the first loaded bill was when you started. So that is a instantly repeatable trick that you can undo and then return the bill if you do it with a borrowed bill. Let's look at a second handling, the second handling that I used to reverse this in the performance video. So the second handling uses all the same folds, but what we're doing is we're going to be moving the thumb tip and the load at different moments. So we've already shown that the bill front and back is a single and there's nothing else there. So at this point, this is where we get into some of the Doug McKenzie handling for his 100 bill switch. Now this is not like it because the bill situation is completely different for his method than for this, but the handling of the tip is very similar. So the handling of the thumb tip, as far as when the load comes out and when the load goes back in, is going to be similar to that. So that's really the only similarity. Where I'm protecting his trick here pretty safely. This is nothing like his trick otherwise. So the thumb tip, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take the load out immediately at the beginning, and we're going to load it only at the very end. So the thumb tip's going to hang out in finger palm for most of this. So we've already shown that everything's empty. We're back to starting position. And what we do is we just reach over as if to straighten the bill, and I'm going to take the thumb tip to the left and slide the bill to the right. And you can see this on the performance video when that happens. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to do what is essentially a tipless bill change, fold by fold, with the load sitting in the fingers, and then the thumb tip sitting in finger palm. Now, what's the benefit to doing this? Well, it makes for some cleaner folding and unfolding, that's for sure. It also allows you to get a better grip on the thumb tip at the beginning and just work with a couple of fingers on the folding, and you're less likely to drop the thumb tip, I think, by doing it this way. So hold on fairly firmly with everything. You don't really have to move the load around very much. We're just going to follow the same folding procedure. So we'll fold the first fold over to the right, and I can switch fingers to get my grip on the bill. Then we'll fold the next fold up, just like before, and then we'll fold the next one to the from left to right. You see I pull the load back into the fingers whenever I need to, so it's not seen. You can see I pull it back this way so it's not seen there. And then here's the magical moment where we fold it back up. And now we reverse the bills, and then we unfold. So we're following the exact same procedure. It's just that this time we're going to do it very cleanly without any need for, you can see I'm just juggling the bill back and forth as I need to unfold the bill. And you can see that this unfolding procedure is very open. I don't have to do any loading in there. Now I'm done as far as the spectators are concerned, and then this is the last piece of handling that I got from Doug McKenzie, and it is the load at the very end, and it's a very simple loading procedure. What we're going to do is we're going to load on the turnaround. So it works like this. I show the front of the bill, and when I go to turn the bill around, I'm going to bring the thumb tip back in this hand and push forward on the bill and load it into my palm like this as I turn the bill around. It's very clean and very quick. And at the end, you're clean again. So 2 different thumb tip handlings. One, I think the first one, the traditional one, is a little bit more complicated than the second one, believe it or not. I find that it's a little easier to keep the thumb tip in the hand through the entire folding procedure than it is to have to switch the thumb tip in the middle of the folding procedure. So I've performed this both ways for people, and the effect is the same as far as what they're seeing, but you can decide for yourself what is easier in terms of the handling that you prefer. So you can also play around with all kinds of other handlings with the thumb tip in different ways to fold and different ways to load. There's a lot of different possibilities with the thumb tip. You'll probably find yourself reinventing all kinds of things that you would find in this book. So that's a Switch, Unfolding the $100 Bill Change by Jon Lovick. Sold by Murphy's Magic Supply, and the traditional bill change. Good luck with that, and I wish you happy magicking.